What an amazing selection of bikes. I do feel super privileged to be
You are.
to be looking at these. They are so special. Tell us a little bit about you and how you kind of came up with these kind of beautiful machines that are here right now.
I've been into bikes for years, late 80s, mountain biking, so 13, 14. E-bikes has really regenerated that for me. It's just reinvigorated love for mountain biking, really. As you get a little older, it just means you can get out more, you can do more. So I've had a few different Levos, Canevo, and these started with an idea that the boys at MB Cyclery came up with, having 3 different bikes with different fork and coil setup. And as a blank canvas, we wanted just a plain frame. So aluminium bike, and that's where the first raw one came out. Started just as I think they were aluminium comp.
So just off the shelf Levos with a couple of nice bits on it.
Exactly. I think they were even the sort of previous year one, and we sort of took all the bike, stripped them all down. I got sanding, which took ages with 3 just to perfect the process.
Hold on, so you took a perfectly good
bike,
frame, aluminium Levo frame.
Perfectly good whole bike.
And just started sanding the whole thing down.
We took it, dip it first, just to get all the original paint off it.
What's it get dipped in?
It's like an acid dip. I'll take it to the guys who do sort of some wheel refurbs. Okay. So they have an acid dip bath, dipped in there. And obviously it's got to be all stripped out and blown apart as well. So it's quite a bit of work just to get it down to a bare frame.
Right, so you take everything off, all the motor, all the harness.
All the bearings, everything. It's just got to be completely stripped. All the bits of plastic decals, stickers. So it's, that takes...
All the things you don't think about.
All the things you don't think about. Even inside where the motor is, there's lots of little bits of plastic and stuff in there. So it's quite a lengthy process just getting it to that stage. Then we dip it, and then it looks disgusting. You've got 3 bikes that are all a bit blotchy, and then literally it's sitting there and rubbing them down. I've tried some power thing to this. It's too aggressive, really, so you want to get that nice smooth finish.
So you're just kind of starting off with something a little bit more coarse and gradually getting it down.
You just keep going over it and over it and over it and over it.
Was that your life for a few months? How long does something like that take?
I think I stopped counting the hours, but it was the first few were a lot of hours, because the process of how the different grades and how the difference between the two, and whether you go all the way down to really fine stuff. Those are a little bit more rough and ready, so it has like a sort of rough brushed finish on them. So if you look at the sort of the grain, if you like, you can see it's a little bit coarser. Whereas with the SL, which I did later, that was a very high polish. So this
when you refined your craft, you got a little bit.
That was a refined, sat in lockdown sun and just sitting there. We went, proper, and then polished it as well, so it sort of really makes it pop.
So we'll have a look at that one in a sec. Yeah. But so the original Levo, you took a regular frame, dismantled it, sanded it as you do.
Yeah, as you do.
But it looks absolutely beautiful. In fact, we were talking a bit about why don't they just do it like this anyway without paint, but you kind of suggested that actually a paint will cover up a lot of the imperfections on a frame anyway. Yeah. So
even some of the welding marks and the bits of whatever process they go, they're obviously mass produced, so they're not perfect. And I bet the paint probably, it's a nice paint finish on those when they come out of the factory, but they probably covers up maybe a few little sins and dings and dents or whatever. So some of those did pop up. My brother-in-law does some of the vinyl decals. We put some decals on these. And then I did clear coat lacquer it, and then we put in a VisiFrame. The VisiFrame sort of kits out for all the front bikes as well.
It looks fantastic. So you've got talk us through the bike. You've got carbon wheels.
The Roval carbon wheels. It did have the Olins. They've since gone off to another home. But yeah, the Zebs, I love those. The Zebs are great. And because I had a coil shock in that, but then my weight and the riding style, I prefer the air shock with a Megneg on it. Just gives it a little bit of pop, which sometimes some of the coils they're great on really rough stuff, but sometimes I just like to pop off stuff. And an e-bike's not the poppiest of bikes anyway. Yeah. But that works really well.
So the Megneg I've seen, I've not experienced it myself, but it is supposed to give some kind of characteristics of a coil to an air shock, and that's what
That's exactly it. And that's not particularly, that's just the bog standard shock actually I had in the box from when we first built it. It had the Olin's coil on originally, which was good. Coil-wise, I prefer the push. That is a bit of a game changer on an e-bike. That is awesome.
I'm looking forward to talking about this one, because this looks
you can't
crazy
have those
good.
On all your bikes because you'd be bankrupt. But that rides really well. And it complements the airfork as well. So I think the way I ride it, and that's a little bit more, got slightly longer travel, 160mm on that, shorter stem. So it's a bit more of a sort of enduro sort of style. If I go up to my local downhill tracks or a bike park, there's a few jumps and something a bit more techy than then I'll take that.
Amazing. So what do you think about these higher volume forks? We've got the Zeb on there, which is a 38 mil. I
Yes.
think when the Levo first came out, it had a 34 mil, like a Fox 34 maybe.
Fox 34.
Do you think it needs something like that on an e-bike? Because the standard, they come with much kind of thinner forks.
On an e-bike, that makes a massive difference. Just, you're going down a trail, it doesn't flex as much. You can run less air pressure in it.
Yeah, so it's more sensitive maybe.
A lot more off the top. Put a few more tokens in there than they sort of came out of the factory with. It ramps up nice. I haven't bottomed that out. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough, but I have wanted to put it on my SL, but I don't know if that's a little bit more of a lightweight bike and works well with the pikes on that one. But
yeah, it's almost how much burly stuff do you put on a lightweight bike?
Yeah, which way do you go? Then you're in sort of down country on a. It's not a bad project though, is it? Down country. You get me thinking here. Down
Maybe
country
there's a fourth bike to join the collection. Old school gears. When I say old school, I mean not
old 11
not electronic gears.
Oh yes, 11 speed. So I've sort of run a Shimano.
Shimano. So you've got SRAM shifter.
Shifter and mech, and then Shimano cassette and chain.
Got it. Okay.
Again, that's just a bit of a personal. I do a fair few miles with some of the coaching and guiding stuff I do, so they're cheaper as well. You can basically change the cassette for relatively, whereas some of the SRAM cassettes, particularly if you get up to 12 speeds a bit.
So let me ask you this question. How many gears does a full fat e-bike need in your experience?
In my experience, probably 3.
Is that what you're using? The
No, I remember years ago, I had a Kenevo which had the 8-speed sort of e-bike specific, and that was a bit clunky and industrial. Not as many. It doesn't need 12. Maybe SL's a slight exception to that rule. That really high gear, you can climb up a wall with her if it's in turbo. So you don't really, I very rarely, and if I look at the chainwheel I'm using, it's probably the sort of lower, I don't know, probably 8, 9.
Yeah.
You could probably get away with if the range was proper.
So 10-speed premium e-bike drivetrain, it's got to be coming soon,
exactly.
hasn't it?
The bigger the number isn't better. So it's probably more the range and the spread.
So that looks brilliant, and you've got shorties on there. It looks like it's just built for full sends. You've got burly components on there. Big fork, Megneg shock, and looks full on. Is this your everyday bike?
That is usually my go-to if I go out for. Yeah, that's the one that gets the most miles put on it.
Okay, cool. Now this looks pretty special.
That has no miles put on it.
It's never ridden.
Not yet, no.
Tell me about this, because the from what I can see, the detail, the workmanship, the choice of components just looks outstanding.
Thank you. I've had that for a few years in its standard form.
What did it start off as? Is it a carbon?
S-Works, 2019? It was the first of that generation S-Works Levo, which was an expensive bike back then, but I used it, done lots of miles in it, a few motors. And it gets to that point where it's just like, I have that, do I need the other bike? You see how much you're sort of investing, how much they cost. And it started off as a bit of a refresh, that's what I was thinking, put a new fork. I was looking at coil. Always been into old vintage retro bikes, and I've got an old M2. I'm lucky enough to meet Ned Overends. I've got a little picture of him and with that bike, and I thought it'd be nice to make a silly idea to make a retro looking e-bike. The frame was done by Lucia down at Velo Finique, just in Petersfield, and I've got a bit of a thing about old ratty truck, pickup trucks as well, so we sort of just wanted that slightly beaten up old look, as if it's rusting, I suppose, but not carbon can rust.
But it's got this unique finish on it that it looks it looks so nice, but in a way that it does look used, but not used.
It's really disgusting at the moment, so I didn't really want to immediately go bogging in it. So we've put it on display in the shop for a little bit. I think it'll look good when it's covered in mud, actually. I think it's one of those bikes, sometimes you see there's some of those sort of bike shots and they're sort of covered in crap after they've done a long test. So it'll probably look good when it's covered in mud. But yeah, I just went and some of the polished pieces, obviously I've had some sandpaper left over. Put some of the black pieces on it, and a lot of things these days on bike, obviously just gloss or satin black, and it just didn't look quite right. So that's where we went and started polishing all the bolts and just made it look a bit more vintage.
So it looks like you've gone to painstaking detail, because you've polished the bolts, the linkage. It looks like you've polished crank arm, spider.
Yeah. So a few bits like King hubs, I picked those in silver spokes. So there's a few bits we sort of played off to make them look a bit more. That's how, black spokes back then, so to make it look a bit older. But yeah, most of the stuff, even did the little bolt under here that holds them. So yeah, did get a bit carried away. But again, lockdown, that was, gave you a little bit extra time to sit there and contemplate and and take your frustrations out in sanding things.
Well, what a project. I'm really intrigued that the forks, they don't look stock to me. Tell me what you've done with these forks here.
I think they're a Lyric, RockShox Lyric. The only thing that's left that is Lyric really is the crown steerer and the lower legs. Internals are all push, so to go along with the push shock, which is awesome, by the way. It's got a coil conversion on the front, and their damping control unit as well. So I had that on the previous setup, so that rides really well, so I wanted to sort of replicate that.
And this is the 11.6 coil.
Yes.
I hear a lot of good things about this push
awesome.
coil.
Yeah.
And it's got, often with a coil, in my experience, if I have a really bad technique and just land to flat, I can bottom something out, you get a harsh kind of, sensation through your whole body, but it's got this hydraulic kind of...
best of both worlds, really. And even the way they got set up, got two different sort of settings almost on it, so you can have it sort of set up, a flick of a switch. Hasn't got sort of like a full climb mode, if you like. You sort of just adjust it individually. Apart from the price of them, because they're a little bit spendy. Yeah, that's the shock to have. Yeah. And I've tried Olin's, I've tried some Fox shocks on my e-bike that came off a Stumpy Evo, and that just outperformed all of them, 100%. So it's worth the money. And it's silver.
And it matches the bike. You had to get that one, didn't you? So again, Diety bar and stem, old school shifters, no electronic shifters on this.
No, I did.
You've got an electronic dropper though.
Yeah, that is, well, it's the best seat post in the world, that thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's less cables. I don't like cables. So all my bikes, if you notice as well, none of them have got any controllers on. Just take another cable out.
So how do you change the mode?
Usually I leave it in trail mode most of the time. Unless I'm going on really long, we've done some really big long, I've got 100 Ks out of that battery in eco, that's sort of 25%. And you have to push, you have to ride the bike.
That's pretty decent.
Yeah.
100K?
So I was from our house right down to the coast and back, cup of tea, turn around, come back again. But that is in 25%, and you have to pedal up over the South Downs. But most of the time I just leave it and just use that. It's really simple, just take hands off the bar. But I don't think really, it's just too cluttery for my liking.
Well, what Specialized have done with the Mission Control app is you can completely tune it anyway, can't you? So you can keep it in one mode, and if you put enough pressure...
to how you use it and your sort of terrain, that's what I do, Where I live, it's very similar, some big old climbs and big old descents. But, usually trail, I've got it set at 60, wind back some of the other settings so it's not too aggressive on the climb, so you don't sort of, spin the rear wheel up all the time. And that gives me, usually I'll go out for about 20-mile ride, and that's sort of, I've got a bar or two left, so it's not, I'm not doing it and just doing half the battery and coming back and have to, go out riding again, and I'm not rinsing it completely. So you find your own way of doing things, don't you? Yeah,
for sure. In terms of weight, have you tried to make it super lightweight, or you just wanted this?
I have that on that one a little bit. That usually came with a 700, so I've been a bit cheeky because I wanted that a bit burlier, and I go on some big rides on that. So that's got the 700 watt battery, and I put the lighter 500 one in that one. It's obviously carbon frame, and everything else, it's generally lightweight components anyway, so carbon wheels. So it's light. It's probably not the lightest, but the S-Works I think is one of the about 20 kilos or something, isn't it?
20 kilos, yeah.
So it's probably there. I'm probably saved a bit, but then the coil shock's probably a bit heavier, so it's probably there or thereabouts.
Yeah, but still pretty light for a
definitely
full-on e-bike with some pretty beefy suspension.
Oh, no, you could go, that's the tyres I've put on a little bit form over function for that.
Sure.
But at the moment, so I'll probably change those out, and then then you can go and hopefully next year when the sun comes out, I'll start using a bit more.
So it looks like like an Iron Man style kind of retro A-Team vibe.
Oh, no, that might have to be it. Yeah, it does look slightly cartoony, doesn't it? But
I think it looks absolutely fantastic and so unique, like absolutely unique. I thought I was being unique by changing up my forks, but you've gone the whole hog. And what about this colour? Because what have you based this kind of colour on?
That's the S-Force I originally had some sort of Judy yellow. The bottom crown's made, the lower legs made in or painted Judy yellow, but it was too bright and didn't went against this sort of slightly shabby theme. So we done those like a sort of early 90s Mag 21 fork, which had that sort of dull gold. So I've got a pair of those forks. So I showed those to. I mean, she even painted the decals on it. So that's not sticker. That's all hand painted. So.
That's amazing. The level of detail on it. It's just one of those bikes that every part that you look at, you can notice a detail on it.
Try and do little bits rather than just being, it's got a different fork on it or it's got different, it's been painted. Make it look so you get in there a little bit more, and that's getting into the minutiae of it, really. Yeah.
I daren't ask the cost because it looks like it is one of those bikes that is, there's a lot of money that's been invested into it. So are you going to keep it as like a showpiece, or do you think?
No, that'll be ridden. That will be, yeah. So I will ride that, the legs. Oh, it already has been ridden, and it's sort of, that's the beauty of the carbon, you know, you can just, it's only bits at the end of the day, isn't it? So we've changed all the parts on it. The fork, there's nothing wrong with some of the other bits on it, but, you know, we'll just
And if
go
it gets too bad, you just sand it down and start again,
yeah,
right?
we'll do version 2.2, whatever it is this time, yeah.
Oh man, that looks absolutely stunning and so unique. And again, loads of time and effort been put into this one and super individual. And then finally, this Levo Sl over here. So you started originally with the original raw. This is the second raw, and you say you've got a slightly different texture or finish on this one?
Yeah, sort of just a bit more refined, really. When the SL came out, and you wanted one, because it seems to be that sort of sweet spot for me, because I do like pedalling. During first lockdown, really, I had a big pile of sandpaper. So it's all about lightweight on it. I mean, it's just making more of a, I wouldn't say a cross country, but, you know, just a lighter. If I've got another bike, so it doesn't have to be one bike, so I can make it lighter, light wheels, gone ASX on everything, just to clean it. Look, two wires, if they can please make wireless brakes.
Wireless brakes.
But
have you seen, I think it's Magura who have done the cables integrated into the bike.
Think about how, there are people who do that. It does look. Two, I can accept two cables. I think that's acceptable.
It looks so clean. So what's the weight of this? Because the standard SL S-Works is, I don't know, 17 kilos, 16.9.
That was my target.
Okay.
Because I quite like the way, interestingly, although I've got carbon, that the aluminium bike rides. And the idea was, can you get an aluminium bike down to the same sort of weight as that? So I think it comes pretty much. We had some lighter weight pedals, and I think I had some lighter carcass tyres as well, which helped a bit. But I got it pretty much the same weight as the S-Works.
You can see you've got this Specialized etched in there.
I'm playing, because I haven't lacquered or put any Invisiframe kit on that yet, just because I wanted to see how it lasts. It lasts really well just in its natural. Once it's polished, because I say we've sort of refined it, so I went down to a lot finer finish, then polished it, and just gave it a light brushing to sort of get that sort of brush stroked finish on it. And then I would normally put like an Invisiframe kit over the top. But we did some sort of reflective silver decals, which I did have on the side there. And then I played around a little bit with a different decal. So that's like an acid etched finish, which I'm not sure on. I might go back to the reflective silver.
I think it looks good. Well, I think it's one of those that if you just have a glance at it, you can't see it. But when you start, like all of your bikes, when you start looking at them closely, you notice these extra bits of detail and you're like, oh, how have you done that? How have you done that?
And since then, I've done a couple of other finishes for other people, and we sort of use that, whether they want to go for the higher polish finish or whether they want sort of slightly raw.
So people actually, are you able to order,
I've done.
If somebody wants one, you can create one for...
Absolutely, yeah. So I think we've done about 10 so far, including the sort of 3 we started with. I've got a little jump bike I'm just doing, and that was an aluminium bike, so obviously that had to go off for the dipping process. I'm doing that as well. But yeah, there's a few out there, but I don't want it to be. It's quite time consuming, so cost-wise, it's not far off having something custom painted, which people don't maybe quite understand. But it's just the hours of sitting there. Yeah. It's a bit laborious, and it takes quite a while because you can't sit there for like 12 hours at a time. You know, a couple hours, and then your fingers hurt and your brain hurts as well. So.
Yeah, but there's no other way of kind of automating it. You can't blast them down with...
If you blast it, so for instance, if you were painting something and it was one colour, you send it off and they'd probably sandblast it or media blast it, but that leaves quite a rough finish, and then you'd have to sand all the way through that. You'd probably be taking too much material off. So I get them dipped, same as the process we did that, and then it's how shiny you want, it's how far you go with, and how fine a media you use to get it back. But yeah, you could really polish them up, but then I thought it might be a bit too bling.
Yeah, you don't want it so shiny. I think it's this.
Yeah, regional again, because I like old sort of vintage retro bikes. Early, GTs, Ascars were that sort of nice, polished, but not. There was quite a. When aluminium was a new thing then, wasn't it? Everything was steel when they came out, so that's probably stuck in my head. Those sort of bikes, and I think it's quite. Silver looks good, doesn't it?
I think it looks brilliant. I think it's timeless. The silver, it's so timeless and classic looking, but still looks super premium. So important question, like which is your favourite?
That's like asking which of your kids is a favourite. This one, no. Probably the S-Works, because it took quite a...
So the Iron Man classic,
it was
kind of
bubbling away in my head for a bit about sort of this was the idea. Ride-wise, I love the SLs. Yeah. Just because I quite like the effort. You have to put a little bit of effort. And you can go out, if you've got friends who go ride sort of an analogue bike, you can go out with them on an SL and sort of tone it down, and then you can keep up with someone on a full fat. So I think it's the best of both worlds, I think.
And what about the difference between the characteristics of the carbon versus the aluminium Levo? So you've got the same bike, but different frame material.
Yeah.
Can you notice much difference, and do you have a preference?
I quite like the way the aluminium rides. I'm not quite sure. I couldn't put any scientific backing to it. It just feels, the aluminium bike, usually with carbon wheels, feels quite nice to me. But then when you get on a lightweight bike, you immediately notice it's lighter. So that's why I've built them up differently, because if you're going on an enduro or downhill to Bike Park Wales or something, I'd grab the one that's slightly burlier, and weight doesn't become so much an issue. Weight isn't so much an issue on an e-bike anyway, I don't think. You don't think you really, people do go on about tyre, drag and this, and whether it's trying to save a gram or two. I don't think it makes two, because they're so accomplished. I can put any tyres on them and they tend to, notice a slight difference, but maybe a slight bit of a battery usage.
I think it's not until you get to the super light.
Yeah, on this you'd notice if it's because it's got a smaller battery on the SL. So that is why I've probably gone a slightly more lightweight route. But yeah, that's almost like a cross-country bike, an enduro bike, and more of a trail bike, I suppose.
So if somebody wants to see these,
yes.
Where do they go? Are they? You said that
they're usually hidden away at my house. We have left the S-Works at MB Cyclery in Hazelmere at the moment. That's there. They've got the other two demo bikes, so the other sister bikes to that one, I suppose. And I use the SL a lot I do some coaching, so I do use it for that, because I can go out with someone that's on a normal bike. Quite a few guys want to go out on e-bikes as well, because e-bike is a different bike to ride. So I've been having inquiries about people who've got an e-bike and sort of they've had normal bikes and they just sort of think that they can't corner them quite as well as they don't, because they take more input. So so that's my sort of workhorse.
Amazing. So if you want to see these, head down to MB Cyclery in Hazelmere.
That's it.
And if you want to get out and experience it, maybe go for some coaching with yourself.
Yeah, raw MTB skills with an S.
Raw MTB skills. Amazing. Well, thanks for bringing the bikes along, and I feel really privileged to check them all out, and I'm going to geek out a little bit more.
Perfect. That's what I like.
Cheers, man.